My fellow bad guys, I, Lex Luthor, your leader, will speak now about my, Lex Luthor's plan. My villainous plan. Question the plan at your peril.
So here on the channel, a time or two, we've definitely accused DC and Marvel of maybe overthinking, overanalyzing some of their issues, maybe reacting inappropriately to fixing problems that don't exist. And one of those fixes is the Omniverse itself. I don't think it's really necessary. I kind of get why they're doing it, but they already had Elseworlds and stuff and like this. But apparently they need to fix the Omniverse already. So now they've introduced the Linearverse. I'm a little confused about this, and someone is here to explain this to me like I'm a 5-year-old, and hopefully I can understand what the hell the Linearverse is my good friend from Comics by Perch. Perch, how you doing?
I'm doing great. I'll do my best at trying to explain this.
So I think this is what it sounds like to me, is they want this Omniverse where everything matters and everything happened, but they also want a clear linear path for the characters, so there's continuity within the Omniverse?
Yeah, I mean, so the Omniverse is apparently a more global concept. So there's a lot of different verses inside the Omniverse, and one of those verses is the Linearverse, which is what was revealed today.
What's the Linearverse do? What's special about it? I know they age differently, right?
Yeah, so in the Linearverse, they basically are trying to answer this problem that everyone has. I mean, any conversation you have with comics, anytime you're like at school with your friends and you're all standing around there and you're not talking about the amazing adventure that Batman had. You're saying, how is it that Batman showed up in like the 30s with those crazy cars, and yet he looks the same age in 2020 fighting the Joker? How can that possibly be? That's what all the kids talk about when they talk about comics. It's how are these characters not getting older? Well, the Linearverse explains this by basically stating that the characters all age very slowly.
Unless they're like teenagers and you're Robin, then you age up normally and then you stop aging.
See, I was talking with somebody else about this last night. I mean, our friend Joe, and I mean, my conclusion is puberty. It has
is it
to
like
be
a mutant? It kicks in when puberty happens?
Or maybe just, every now and then the Omniverse, Linearverse in the Omniverse fails and you get the Ageverse and then you kind of grow older. I don't know. I have to admit, yeah, it's like a hiccup. Exactly. Joe brought this up, and I think it's true. We owe Bendis an apology. Something I didn't think I'd say on your channel, but basically, if not for Bendis aging up John Kent, I mean, he would have been a child forever, been cruel.
All right, well, I guess I'm going to do it. Perch told me. Brian Michael Bendis, I'm sorry, you did the right thing. Aging up Jonathan Kent, because he's in the Linearverse, and he would have been stuck as a 10-year-old in perpetuity.
That's true. It would have been a nightmare for him. I mean, imagine just never being able to stuck at that awkward age forever.
Peter Pan, right?
Torture. Yeah, absolute torture. He cares about the characters. Now, what's true about the Linearverse is that it's not all the verses. So the March comics, your Justice League, your Green Lantern, your Our Floor when that comes out in May, all the rest, they're not in the Linearverse. Maybe. We're not sure. Some comics are not in the Linearverse. They're still in the Omniverse outside of the Linearverse. And the Linearverse is just a different verse which has characters that may be the characters you're reading or may not be. We don't know.
So are they going to be stamped? Like you're going to get an L on the cover that says, you are now reading the Linearverse and here you're reading Omniverse? I
don't think so. I mean, arguably the person who came up. Yeah, the person who came up with this idea should have an L stamped on them, but no, I don't. I don't know. I don't know how much they're going to brand it. It was unclear in the announcement. It's like this is something that exists now, and other people can come in and play with this when they want. So who knows if we'll really know? I mean, everything matters, Wes. So
Exactly. So the Linearverse matters, and I want to take it seriously, but I'm finding it hard taking it seriously because it seems so completely unnecessary.
It's all right. I'll stop the sarcasm because I I did this. I announced this as I mentioned with Joe, and the funny part is the people watching the video, at least half of them thought we were doing a bit because it's so ludicrous of a concept. This is not a bit. You hit on it at the beginning. This is a problem that doesn't need to be solved, and DC keeps doing these crises events to solve the terrifying problem of their continuity and their universe and how confusing it is to everybody. Except it's not confusing to everybody. This isn't. I ran a store 30 years. And at no point I can tell you was there a serious conversation of people coming in saying, I don't understand how Superman is lifting an old classic car on the cover of this, and then he's existing at the same age in 2020. Nobody has that question. It's never been. It's fans will joke about, oh, Batman's got to be 80 years old, but it's a joke. Nobody's really worried about that. Just like nobody is worried seriously why James Bond is Sean Connery and Timothy Dalton and Daniel Craig. Nobody worries about that. They can explain. It's like, well, that's just the code name, or they just shut up and enjoy the movie. Either way, it works. This is
so. The article I read, they're like, well, they didn't want people to get confused that the Bruce Wayne that was introduced, in the 30s, and the Bruce Wayne in the 50s and the 70s and the 90s, that's all the same character. They didn't want to cause confusion with it, so they needed the Linearverse to explain this, so people wouldn't be using, I guess, headcanon, being like, well, like, who was it? Scott Snyder said every 27 years, Bruce recreates himself.
Sure. I mean, just tell the stupid stories. Like,
no one cares.
Let people enjoy them. Nobody is sitting around worrying about this. And don't solve problems you don't need to solve. And this is absolutely a problem you don't need to solve. I mean, if the counter argument to this is, hey, here's a cool storytelling concept where everybody just ages super slow. I guess. Like, is that a cool concept? Is there some...
If everyone ages super slow, what does it matter? Because everyone else is aging super slow. Like, sure.
Exactly. I mean, the population of the world has got to be like 5,000 billion at this point. I mean, it's just... It doesn't make any sense at all. And maybe a talented writer can come in and tell us a story with an interesting hook that Batman uses his knowledge in the 30s to solve a crime in the 2020s. Maybe that's cool. To me, it's just sad. It's like Lois has been doing the same job for 80 years and she sucks at it. Like she can't spell for 80 years. It took her 50 years as a reporter to figure out Superman in real time. I mean, like none of this stuff makes any sense, like at all. It's the Dark Knight Returns storyline has to, if we're using this timeline, be around like the year 3000, right about the same time the Legion of Superheroes exist. I mean,
yeah, when did Kingdom Come happen? The year 5000.
The year 5000. I mean, Ronald Reagan's still alive in the year 3000. I mean, it's all very strange, and maybe there's some good stories that can come out of this. Cool. I'm not just bagging on DC. But don't solve these problems. Just let your creators write comics. These are dumb problems to solve.
How many of your viewers? Because I hear it all the time that are like clamoring and desperate for DC to just say, you know what, we're going back to a pre-crisis universe. Because every time they try to fix something, they cause 10 more problems.
Well, I mean, yeah, and that was the hook. I mean, this spoiler for Generations Forged. It ends with the Wave Rider giving Batman a time machine. Which, number one, is he not just going to go back and save his parents? But okay, and then he tells them, you only use this when there's a crisis, a real crisis. Wink. And it's like, to be continued, So are you already setting up another crisis event in a year or two, which I guess in Linearverse timing will be like 20 seconds from now? I don't know.
Like I said, they're solving problems that, I'm sorry, I got distracted by there it is. There's a frog in my house. He's over there.
That's more exciting in the Linearverse, yeah.
Yes, but it's just it's a solution for a problem that never existed. They're answering a call that people never had. People aren't clamoring for this answer. It serves no one's purpose. Everyone reads this and it's just confusing. We got an Omniverse with it and a linear verse within an Omniverse, but we've also got an Elseworld, but we've also got an Earth Omega. But then there's maybe these other multiverses underneath it and on top of it, and Diana Prince is ascended.
Don't worry about that. Just DC. Just tell your comics. Don't try and fit them into some puzzle. Dan Jurgens makes a comment that, hey, think about this like there's a puzzle, and you just have to sand some pieces off to make them fit, and you can kind of and that's not how you do puzzles. You don't take a bunch of pieces and like I'm just going to put them.
That's how you cheat.
That's how you cheat. Don't cheat. You come up with a terrible looking image at the end. Just don't do this to yourself. Just in all seriousness. You've got fans, you've got people who want to read stories. Stop getting in the way of those two things and inserting rules that nobody cares or wants to hear about.
Absolutely. So the news that nobody wanted to get, we got the Linearverse within the Omniverse. It makes tons of sense. Everyone's going to understand it. You will know when you're reading a Linearverse story rather than an Omniverse story. You're almost guaranteed.
Absolutely. Yes. This is how the city of Bruce happens. This is how he has time to impregnate all those people. I'm confusing more people now at this point. So.
If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like. I would appreciate it very much. It helps us attract more views for the channel. Subscribe for future commentary, comic book news, and reviews. And don't forget to ring the bell for notifications. If you want to talk comics, movies, and much, much more, you can follow me on Twitter at Wes_from_TC. With that, Salamat Po, and I'm out.